And this was really intriguing, to watch to list out, the top 10 most profitable movies by emotional arc. And the reason, we showcased The Man in the Hole is because you can see like 80% of people want to see somebody who has fallen into a hole return to triumph.
Emotional algebra, where the heart meets the math. What is integral is derivative as you figure out your path. Power plus emotions equals more than you can see. Listening to the wisdom.
Hey guys, it's me again, and another episode of Emotional Algebra with Dr. E. Glad to have you back. And today we have a really interesting, fun discussion. And even to start this discussion, I'm going to bring in my sidekick here, my Robin to my Batman, or maybe you're the Batman and I'm the Robin. I don't know, but
I think I'm a better Robin.
Okay, well then I'm Batman.
I don't know how. I think I'm close to how Robin sounds.
Yep. There we go.
Of a man.
Yep. So we are going to talk about film, the emotion of film and how it's created. What's the emotional ride it takes us on? It's Blockbuster season now, as we know. And have you been to see any good movies lately, Tara?
I've been so bad about seeing movies right now. I would say the one that I just recently saw was The Housemaid.
Yeah.
Have you seen that?
I have not.
Oh, it was so good. So my daughter's been talking about it and talking about it and talking about it. And I was like, okay, fine. Like, I'll sit down and watch it. And it was definitely one of the better movies I've ever seen. Really? Oh my God. Highly recommend. Yeah.
Oh.
Highly.
Wow.
But I haven't been to a theater in a long time. Like, I need to go back and get like that theater experience.
Yeah. There's some I'd definitely like to see in a theater, but saw Masters of the Universe. I took some friends of the family to see that. That was fun, and all the little Easter eggs in there, and the joke and humor that that I got that the younger people didn't. Because again, I used to watch He-Man back in the 80s. Back when I was in high school,
he was huge.
Yeah, it was. By the power of Grayskull.
And then you had like Stretch Armstrong and like all that cool stuff that kind of went along with that genre.
Yep. So I think there were probably a lot of adult dudes around my age watching it, and but it was a fun movie. There's a lot of fun movies out there. There's a lot of action flicks. There's a lot of love stories out there, and romantic comedies, and we all tend to have our brand. I'm more of I love the Disney Marvel movies. I just love those stories. Yeah,
they're phenomenal. Like, nobody really does it better than like Disney-Pixar. Like, they just do it upright, and it's such a fun. They always take you on such a fun ride, which I always love movies where I can sit back, relax, like just like give me whatever it is so I can ingest it. And then, of course, depending on my mood, then you have those other movies where like you have to think and you have to try and like decipher what's happening and try and see if you can figure out the bad guy or whatever it is. But Disney-Pixar, you're always just sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride.
Yep. And the way they weave humor, especially into some of those very serious subjects with the Marvel ones, but then also the way they weave in really strong life lessons is one thing that I really enjoy about how Marvel does their movies, and even Toy Story and the way they'll tell their stories and bring important pieces. I remember, again, Grace has really grown up from the middle to the current Toy Story. But the one where I think it was Toy Story 4, where the boy gives his toys to the little girl. Was that the one where he leaves them with her? And the song that was at the end, just like.
So I did not watch that one because I had a daughter that was heading off to college, and I'm like, I don't need to see that. I'm living that in real life. And like, I knew that I would be like, I wouldn't be able to recover because I'm so emotional that like, but I did see the edits of it, and I'm like, I can't, like, I literally can't. But that just shows what an amazing job that they do, because it literally like puts you in that experience,
Yeah.
whether you have a kid going off to college or not. It's like, it's just this basic human emotion that you feel. It's that guttural response. And yeah,
Yeah.
they're amazing. And they appeal to a myriad of demographics and audiences. And that's
Yeah.
really special. Not a lot of people can do that.
And just the songwriting, I mean, like a Randy Newman and, you
Mhm.
know, what he's able to do, and John, on the Star Wars movies, God, John, he also did Jaws, I think. What was his
Don't know
name?
his last. I
I
don't
can't
know.
think
I
of
just
it, but, yeah, just
done.
amazing the way they produce these scores, for movies that just they make the movie in so many.
It's the heartbeat of the film. Like,
Yeah.
without the movie, we were just talking beforehand. I'm like, watch a horror movie on silent, and like, it's not scary. Like, if you need
Mhm.
it, it's not scary
Yeah.
until you have that heartbeat in there. It's nothing. And for those viewers who don't know, so I act and both of my daughters act. So when you're on set, it's not really scary either. Like,
Mm.
because you're doing it in such short little segments. And even when they'll have like edited pieces together, sometimes they'll like give you a little preview of what you shot the day before. Like, they're called dailies, and like they'll show you whatever it is. And you really start to like hear in your head the music and visualize it, and what it's going to be. But
Mhm.
even when it's just like edited together, and sometimes they'll even put down like a dummy track, and you're like, oh my God, that's amazing. But until that music is there, it doesn't come to life. It's amazing what it does for emotion.
Yeah, yeah, it is, it is. So, and that's one of the things that really interested me about doing an episode on this was all these pieces coming together, but and the biggest thing for me is how we can see the villain, and how that villain within just a scene or two can
Hmm.
then we're rooting for them, or all of a sudden they're our good guy, they're the guy we want to succeed. It's just all this psychological manipulation, and how we feel so entrenched in wanting to see that person pay, and then wanting to see them get out of the consequences that they would normally face in our culture. So with that, let's go ahead and dive on in and take from here. So again, we have our notebook slideshow here helping us out with this. So, the emotion engine, why movies make us feel, a blueprint for storytellers. We're looking at the biology, or why our brains force us to care, and the craft of how filmmakers pull our psychological strings. So this is the core of the show, and what we'll dive into with this is how do filmmakers basically hack our brains. So the mission of a movie is or this episode is to demystify how films engineer human emotion. We're breaking down why everyday people cry over animated lamps and secretly root for psychopathic villains. I think Tara brought up the Netflix series You, and we'll touch on that a little later.
So good.
Yeah, and then the vibe, light, fun, and accessible, no dense academic jargon, just the fascinating mechanics. So that's what we want to do in this episode is sometimes I dive a little bit deep into things. Here we just want to keep it light and easy for this episode. So the narrative arc, the biology. So even we're going into telling the beats. So in movies and shows, you talk about the beats and what those beats are in setting up a show, an episode, a movie, and that's kind of the movements through it. So first, the narrative arc is the biology, why our brains force us to care. And then the story shapes and villains. I love the idea of the story shapes when we get to that. That was absolutely fascinating to me. The universal emotional roller coasters and our dark obsessions within those story shapes and views of villains. And the architects, how actors and editors pull our psychological strings. So that's going to be what we're going to talk about today through that. So tell me a little bit more about this, how you walk through the chemistry of a good story, Tara, and all your experience and what you've learned through your craft.
Well, I love what this slide does, where it talks about like cortisol demands attention, like the brain recognizes a high stakes problem. I think everybody realizes that, right? Like, when all of a sudden you see someone, a character, especially if you've already grown to love and admire this character and you're rooting for them, and then all of a sudden they're in this compromising situation, it
Mhm.
does something internally to you. And of course, in a scientific state, your cortisol goes up. So it's like, oh my gosh, there's something happening. Like I have to pay attention. I have to root for this person. Like I have to do something. And it's so cool to get that experience. This arc is like a roller coaster, right? So like you're at the top and you're wondering what's going to happen. And right, arms up. And then, moving over, the oxytocin triggers empathy. So then the brain starts to force us to care about the characters. So if you've already cared about them previously, now they're in a
Mhm.
bad situation. Now you can imagine the empathy has grown even more for them. So that's really cool. And I love your neuroscience fact, with just 100 seconds of the right dramatic part. Neuroscientists can predict with an 80% accuracy who will donate money to a stranger. Like that is so crazy, right? But it really does. I think it speaks to the fact that we really are empathetic humans at
Mhm.
our core. And when we
Mhm.
see even a stranger that we now care about based on 10, 30 minutes previously of being introduced to them,
Mhm.
how we can develop such care and compassion in such a short amount of time, even under imaginary circumstances.
Yeah. Yeah, and I saw recently the making of Toy Story,
Mhm.
and they talked about, and this really gave me an appreciation for the Disney executives and what they know work, because Pixar first came up with a storyline where Woody was a lot more snarky and kind of mean to the other toys. And when the Disney execs saw it, they almost made Pixar sell everything and move down to LA so they could basically control the narrative literally. And Pixar said, no, give us one more time. Let us know what you're looking for. And they pulled it off. But the whole idea that they could see so quickly is in just a short part of the film and the storyboards to say, no, this isn't Disney. This isn't what we want to do. And it really helped them to refine their whole craft and to see through Disney's eyes of telling so many stories over the years, and story after story after story, and taking even we see so many things that they turned fairy tales into what people often think really give ownership to Disney, not the fairy tale that was told for hundreds of years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's when you know you're telling a good story, when people give you ownership for that story and
Mhm.
where it came from. So yeah, and I absolutely, the neurochemistry and neuroscience of all this, and understanding that even before we understood neuroscience is a sign of a really good, to me, storyteller to understand it. So here's the idea of loving the lamp, the empathy illusion. So what are your thoughts on this, Tara, as we walk through this slide?
Well, first of all, I love the little Pixar lamp. I'm like, it's a
Mhm.
little Pixar lamp. It's absolutely adorable. But big lamps bat a ball with just the shade. Little lamps put their whole body into it. So weight and time,
Mhm.
age and personality. It's great. It shows that art is the imitation of life. We've heard that a million times. So you're never going to connect to an actor who is just static, who is not
Mhm.
authentic. But somebody who is truly giving emotion, is being authentic on camera, we react to that. And I think that's truly what the analogy is with that little Pixar lamp with, static versus movement. And we automatically project human thoughts and intentions onto abstract and moving shapes. I think that's really cool. Where the embodied simulation, the bottom up, our brains mirror neurons fire as if we are physically experiencing the character's movements and bridging the empathy gap. And I think that's really just all encompassing, right? This is mind and body connection. When we see an actor that is truly in it with the emotion, we're right there with them.
Mhm, mhm. And let's go to look at Castaway.
Yeah.
How Wilson became such a center point of that, and just by the idea of a handprint to give it a characteristic of looking like a human with hair kind of thing, with those fingers up, was such an amazing understanding and insight that it's kind of like in a movie, while he was able to connect with a ball, we were able to connect with a ball and root for the ball. And when it gets swept out into the ocean and he was devastated, here we're devastated with him. And so that's the thing we want to realize as we seek connection as humans. We seek relationships, and we often seek that emotional ride, which to me is important for us to see why we can stay in relationships that can feel so dysfunctional, because sometimes we root for those characters in our own story arcs. And we have to see that so many times art may imitate life, and life may imitate art, and we want to understand those emotional rides that we take. And that's why, to me, telling this story about movies really can help us relate back to us. The movies become the mirror. And I think that's, again, where we're talking about these mirror neurons. If we can root for a lamp to be able to, play with a ball and jump up and down and almost see it smile at us, and feel pride and confidence just by the movement of the head of that lamp and where it looks, it's amazing, again, what we can do with these stories and characters and how people understand that.
Absolutely. And I think there's a few slides down that we talked about, like the Cinderella complex, that I can't wait to dive into.
Yeah, yeah. So this was one to me that was really your strength because of the work you've done in movies and how you understand writing, your story, your history and journalism. This is your wheelhouse for sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, the story world, you start with a situation, you have an obstacle, and then you have a consequence, right? And I mean, that if we zoom out in any situation in our life, we can kind of see that 1, 2, 3, beginning, middle, end. When we really get into a protagonist psychology, this is like what's happening on the inside. It's like it goes down to the emotional appraisal. There's a motivation then to get a goal and a plan to overcome that obstacle. And then there's an action, and then there's a decision, which takes us back to the beginning of a resolution. And I was talking about, in journalism, that's called a donut. Like, we put together what's called packages. So if you ever watch the news, that 1 minute, 30-second story that is told, that's called a package. And if you do it in a donut format, it's really like beginning, middle, end, and you wrap it all together. And in life, we call it a full circle moment, which is often what they do in film, right? We have this beginning, middle with this conflict, and then a resolution at the end. So the story isn't a list of things that happened. It's an emotional problem-solving cycle. And the audience enjoys that ride, and they have those exact rises and falls of the character's internal tension because it emulates our life. Like, we all had that story world at the top, right? Trigger, obstacle, consequence. And sometimes we have that happen like 14 times in an hour, right? Like,
Right.
we have a trigger, an intervention, and a consequence. We're hungry, we need food, we're full, we're satisfied. It can be as simple as that versus taking that to the worst problem in life. So, point being, it's relatable. And that's why we so love movies, because we can relate with our own unique circumstances and experiences to what's being presented in front of us.
And we get to wrap it up in an hour and a half to 2.5 hours, or most movies, 90 to 120. We go on this whole journey. That thing that is really interesting to me is how we have so many TV show series that they'll take the series through this 8, 12, used to be 23 episodes, this show 24. We'd go on that journey of 24 hours in a season to see this resolution, and each had its own arcs, all these different arcs that it would take in that. And then the journey we go in only 2 hours that has only a scant amount of the detail we see in the show. And sometimes that journey is often even more exciting, yet not as detailed as the one we might go on through the whole season. But
Right.
So that's what's so interesting to me, how you can get as much excitement, and almost our brains fill in the gap in the stories that we don't see in the TV show series. You know what I mean?
Well, absolutely. And I mean, the more authentic the character, the more you're going to relate to them. And those are all little subplots, right? Like, everyone, Ross and Rachel, if you were watching Friends, everyone was like, most people were rooting for them and wanted that to happen. And like you said, fill in the blanks. I think people still believe it. It's, in some fairy tale world, it's like, oh my gosh, Ross and Rachel are like living happily ever after, because we were so invested. You get so invested in these stories because they make you laugh, they make you feel whatever it is that you want to feel in that day. And I think that's why art is so important. It helps you through pain points in your own life. So not only can you relate, but they're therapeutic. And whether that be, a love story that you want to watch after you're going through a horrific breakup, or maybe it's a comedy because someone just passed that you love so much and you just need to laugh. I just find movies and this art form so important, and oftentimes not valued as much as it should be, because we all need it so much, and during COVID, we all understood how important music and creativity and acting was, because it was the only thing, that we could do and was really getting us
I
through.
think a
So
lot of it is we want to feel connected to our actors. And I kind of look at it, you look at certain actors play certain roles and they get hired again and again and again. And why they command so much money is we have the relationship with them, and we'll get into that. But it's kind of like a comedian. Two comedians can tell the same joke and deliver it almost identically. One guy will get a heck of a lot bigger laugh because we might know him and have that connection with him than the newbie who's coming in and telling the joke, and we don't have that connection with him yet.
yeah, and I think that also comes down to authenticity again. If someone is being authentic, you immediately relate to them. If somebody is lying, and that lie, what I mean by that is if they're trying to get a laugh, if they're
Mhm.
trying to be funny, they're trying to be something that they're not, we know when someone's lying to us. Like,
Mhm.
it's the same thing. It's a relationship, regardless of whether that's happening in person or whether that's happening on film. That's why there's certain characters that we just can't get into. It's why shows flop, because
Yeah.
people didn't engage. And and I'm not saying that it was necessarily bad acting. Sometimes the writing doesn't resonate. Sometimes it doesn't have the promotion that it needs. But oftentimes, if a character says something on film and you're like,
Mhm.
I don't believe them. Or like, that was weird. That came out of left field.
Right.
Most of the time, it's because either the actor didn't understand what they were saying and they're
Mhm.
just saying a line, or they were not authentic in the way that they were saying it. And the viewer can feel it. It's
Yeah.
human emotion.
Yeah.
So better actors, like the really authentic actors, like a Tom Hanks, when Tom Hanks sits on a couch on a late night show, he's still kind of the same guy in Castaway. He's still
Mhm.
kind of the same guy in Money Pit. You know what I mean? Like, because we all have different facets of our personality, and he's able to pull from all of those different places, from authenticity, that we just always relate. Denzel Washington is another great example. Reese Witherspoon is another great example. Like, these are really authentic actors that can go into all of these different characters, but they still feel real because they're pulling from their own personality and their own vantage point. And that makes a phenomenal Academy Award winning actor, and also a very relatable actor. And they sell lots of tickets, which is why they can demand that high price, because people want to be a part of that experience.
Right, right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So this is a slide that talks about the different ways that they structure films, kind of the themes around it. So so this is where AI went through and analyzed thousands of movie scripts to reveal, like, basically to find the pattern, to find the different patterns in the movies that follow one of six basic emotional states. So we have the rags to riches and riches to rags. You remember Trading Places, Tara?
Absolutely.
You had each rags to riches, riches to rags, all in one movie. And then even it basically then had that man in a hole for Dan Aykroyd's character, and it
Mm-hmm.
had the rags to riches for Eddie Murphy's character.
Mm-hmm.
So we see the mixing of some of those roller coasters in there. And the man in the hole we'll get to in a little bit, but I love the way that the slide. So riches to rags, it talked about Groundhog Day, and it wasn't that it was about financial riches; it was about emotional riches.
Yeah.
It was where he found life's values from feeling emotionally bankrupt in many ways, and he didn't realize it because the ways that he was looking at success and how he valued his status was so surfacey and vapid, he didn't recognize his own loneliness and his own emptiness through that journey until he found somebody that evoked that in him. And then we look at the Icarus idea, the Greek myth, where the boy who flies too high to the sun, his dad warns him, and he makes the wings out of wax and feathers. He gets too close to the sun, he crashes to the ground. Cinderella, we have this rise and fall and rise, a classic Cinderella story. I'm going to let Tara talk a little bit about that too. But on that, we're looking at Spider-Man 2. It's calling to that in that story. The Icarus example was on the waterfront. That's an old movie. We
Mhm.
have Oedipus story, where we have this fall and rise and fall. So Oedipus was basically his father sent him off because of the myth that says that he's going to die at the hands of his son. So he has his lead general or whatever take his son off to be murdered, and the general secretly gives him to a farmer or person out there he's raised by. And then what happens? Oedipus, obviously, he ends up killing his father, not knowing who he is, and marries his mother. So interesting story there. So we have these stories, and they gave them names in this. So these are basically, if you watch a movie, you might want to watch it with this in mind in the future, to think about, is this a rags to riches, riches to rags, a man in a hole, an Icarus, Cinderella, Oedipus? So this is a great little fun thing to help you to dive in the movie a little more, or even maybe have some discussions afterwards. And like I said, in Trading Places, the mix of some of those stories within it, and even certain arcs will have multiple stories. You could have a man in a hole in an Oedipus story, an Icarus story within a rags to riches, obviously. So that's where we have the interest in looking at these different ways that stories are told that help us get on the inside of them. So here's this idea of the man in the hole. I'll let you talk a little bit more about this one, Tara.
Yeah, I think, and this is just one example of everything that you just showed. But when writers go to script an entire movie, they know exactly, obviously, what they're doing and what these arcs look like. So this is a great example of an emotional arc. In this one, like The Godfather, a happy journey begins, and then you just have this unbelievable dip of emotional intensity. And that's where the viewer is like, wow, this is a mess. How are they going to get out of this? And then you watch that slow climb coming out to where you have that triumphant return to positive emotion. And that always leaves the viewer feeling like, they did it. It's wrapped up in a clean bow, which, to your point earlier, in our lives, that normally takes a heck of a lot longer than 90 minutes or 2 hours. So having that sudden turn into negative emotion and watching that hero trapped and then having that triumphant return is really amazing. And this was really intriguing, to watch to list out the top 10 most profitable movies by emotional arc. And the reason we showcased The Man in the Hole is because you can see, like, 80% of people want to see somebody who has fallen into a hole return to triumph. And I think that speaks a lot about humanity. We're always rooting for the underdog. Like, we're always rooting for the underdog. And that's what Man in the Hole is. So audience want to see that psychological reward for a hard-won escape. Somehow, some way they climbed their way out of it. And Man in a Hole drives over 50% of the highest income profit movies. I just think that's amazing. But to me, it's not surprising, because again, we are always rooting for that person who has fallen. And then we want to see them win after they've been beaten down.
Well, I go back to Infinity War. At the end, imagine if the movie had ended with Tony Stark's. I hope I'm not ruining it for anybody. But had they ended it with Tony Stark's funeral and his right at the end, where you see the flowers this is proof that Tony Stark has a heart. And if that had been roll credits after that, no, people would have left with dissonance. They would have left with that. They might have felt, what happened? Because that's where he's left in the hole. But it was about people coming out of the hole, humanity coming out of the hole, and all these superheroes giving hope that even when Captain America then is sitting on the log after he goes throughout time to return all the Infinity Stones to where they belong in time, and he decided not to come back to that present. The gift in that was the man out of the hole was he got to live the life that he wanted to live with the love of his life that he left behind. And I love that when he said, "Do you want to tell me about it?" And he says, "No, I don't think I will." And that left to the imagination for the viewer. And then they cut to the end where they just have this song playing and the people slow dancing in the house. that was such an interesting way to bring us all as humanity, and then as the individual, and the Captain America finding his fairy tale ending in so many ways, when you thought that he couldn't, but he found a way through that to find his ultimate love of his life and live out his life in such a way that, again, leaves it to our imagination.
Yep.
Hey viewers, our episode ran a little long, so we decided to split into 2 episodes. So stay tuned for the next episode to pick up where we left off, and until next time,